I'm going to do the first episode of my family history project today because you have to start somewhere. It is maybe going to snow, so I'm in front of the fireplace. I have my dog over here. My husband's in the back and can never stay still, and he's got his dog who can also never stay still. So we'll see how this goes. It's like the fourth time I've tried to do this already. Right, so family history. A few years ago, my dad's sisters and their mother, so my maternal grandmother, started to root through their side of the tree. And finally, my aunt sent me all their work that they've done using Ancestry.com, which now, nowadays, has a really cool visualized tree feature, so you can wander around all the different branches. So because that's my paternal side of the tree, there's a lot of work that's been done on that side of my past. So I thought I would start with my maternal side. There's only a lot of lore surrounding my maternal side. I grew up away from everybody. My parents moved a full day's drive away from Buffalo, New York, and we only saw our family, our extended family, maybe once a year or so, if in the reunions and the like. But because it's a good Italian family, there's lots of stories. And my aunts didn't investigate that side. So that's where I started. What I found so far, looking on the internet, is a record of my maternal great-grandparents in the 1920, 1930, and 1940 census, U.S. census records. They're handwritten census records. They are very inconsistent in terms of assigning dates and ages, and even my maternal great-grandfather's name changes a lot. But what I found so far, based on what I knew from family lore and what I've been able to find in these census records, is that my maternal great-grandfather very likely immigrated to the U.S. for the first time in the mid-1890s as a young boy, so he would have been between 10 and 12 years old. His older brother had already immigrated here, so it's possible that there was a family connection. For the next about 15 years or so, he probably was looking for work in the U.S. and, coming of age generally, and making trips back to Italy. My maternal great-grandmother, who was very well educated, knew English, she didn't come over to the U.S. until 1912, I believe. Again, the census records are a little unclear because they're handwritten, and I've only just started, so I haven't been able to verify everything yet. But what I think happened is my maternal great-grandfather was naturalized as a U.S. citizen around 1910, and then married my maternal great-grandmother, probably in Italy, and then they conceived their first child. He moved back to the U.S., and once she had born her child, their first child, she moved to the U.S. to follow him. So it would have been around 1912 that my maternal great-grandparents finally settled in Austin, Pennsylvania. I know that from the census records that they lived on Italian Row in this little town called Austin, Pennsylvania. My maternal great-grandfather was a foreman at the paper and pulp mill, and my maternal great-grandmother worked as a merchant running a grocery store. While they lived in Austin, Pennsylvania, they had one Italian-born child, and then they had, I believe, four or five, no, it would have been 6 or 7 additional children born in Austin, Pennsylvania. And around 1929, they had their last child who was born in Pennsylvania and moves the family to Buffalo. 1929 is the big stock market crash, but family lore attributes their move to a peak in tensions by white supremacists, possibly the Ku Klux Klan. A coworker of mine actually is from the same county and says that it's unlikely that it was the Ku Klux Klan, but certainly there were racists and supremacists in the area. So around 1929, they moved to Buffalo, New York, had their last few children, and that is where my family is. That's where I consider my family to be from, Buffalo, New York, in this very circuitous but pretty common route for Italians of that period. And I've read the first major chapters, I think that's called the first book of Patricia Costa Viglucci's account of growing up Italian in God's country. So God's country is basically Potter County, the central north rural sector of Pennsylvania. And in her account, it was very common for Italians to move to the U.S., of course, during this giant immigration period, but particularly it was not unheard of for folks like my maternal great-grandparents to move from one rural mountain town in Italy, in my case, Picentro, Italy, to a rural mountain town in the U.S., in this case, Austin, Pennsylvania. I'm still investigating, but I thought I would share a part of my late great uncle Orr's book on the canal. It's his account of being in the first wave at Guadalcanal, and so the book isn't about Austin, Pennsylvania, but in the chapter called Our Journey to Guadalcanal, he does allude to how he, like so many others, ended up in the Marines at this time. And the answer is, of course, poverty, because this is the Great Depression. So, here's my Uncle Orr's words. I was born in a very small Pennsylvania town called Austin, a few miles south of the New York state line, and about halfway between Pittsburgh and Buffalo. Austin is so small that some Pennsylvania maps don't even show it. I first saw the light of day in July 1921, the 5th of 9 Marion children. Both my parents originally came from the Abruzzi region of Italy, high up in the Apennine Mountains, about 100 kilometers east of Rome. The family name Marion was originally Mariani. My mother was Annunziata, so named because she was born on the Feast of the Annunciation in March 1892. After she came to America, she called herself Nancy. She arrived in America soon after she and my father were married. My father, Perry Marion, was a good-looking guy who attracted the eye of many a young lady, but he had eyes only for his Nancy. Unlike many Italian immigrants of her generation, Mama learned proper grammatical English from a teacher, and she disapproved of some Italians who came to America, enjoyed the good things America has to offer, but never took the trouble to learn proper English. She had her standards, and she held to them, but she was also a woman with a very warm heart. So, that's part of a very small part of On the Canal, written by my late great uncle Orr on my maternal side. He was born in Austin, and this is the best account that I have of my family history in that time. Pretty much everyone has died, so I can't ask them. I know, for example, that my maternal great-grandfather died in 1969. I found his obituary online, so I had no chance of asking him. But I'm excited to continue reading about their life and see what else I can find. For example, I know that when they moved to Buffalo, at first they owned, the 1930 census says that they owned their home on Preece Avenue, and then by the 1940 census, they rented. So, again, that wouldn't have been uncommon. It's the Great Depression, but I'm excited to see if I can find out more, to see if I can find other records of them, and just get a little bit more connected to this period of my family's history. If you've done any genealogy, or if you've read any books because of your family history, I'd be curious to know your stories. Feel free to email me or comment down below, and have a great day.